Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakal Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, a great millstone who are teaching this truth. And a shout out to Yakim that's out there in four quarters of the earth proclaiming. As it has been reported, but not on the mainstream. Hell, you don't even see this even on the not so mainstream. The only one that's really been talking about the concept or idea of nuclear meltdowns has really been Seven, who put out a few videos prior to the hurricane making landfall. Well, what's going on is yesterday there was a hot shutdown for one of the nuclear power plants, and what's happened is they have not been able to, which when you do a hot shutdown takes about a month or so, but you have to have men in there to man the whole thing for it to go through the proper shutdown. They cannot get there because of the flooding. Also, you will not hear this on the mainstream media. You know how they always send out evacuation orders? Not this time. There were those that were held back, told that they would not be allowed to evacuate during this particular crisis, which now it has made landfall. Yeah, that was on RT. That's not going to be reported on the mainstream either. So there's a nuclear meltdown going on. In the meantime, Israeli state has bombed Syria for the second day in a row. And this time, because of their bombing of Syria, the fire came from sea, from a French frigate, and then also from the Israeli State Air Force. During the process of all this, the S-200 missile defense system, by mistake, had shot down an IL-20, a Russian IL-20 plane. And so what's happened is Russia has come out and said that because it was an airstrike on Syria illegally, without any authorization from Russia, as if the Israeli state, Amalek, ever does anything by counseling Russia first before they attack. Russia's going to hold Israeli state accountable. We'll just see what Vladimir Putin does about that. So those are quite a few things that have already taken place, but they're really not talking about this nuclear meltdown. Now, we have camps in both North Carolina and South Carolina. And Fukushima plant was only talked about for a couple of days, then the invasion of Libya happened. And that meltdown went through a full meltdown. The core reactors did get melted down. What's happened here is that a similar reaction, people, if you cannot man this, then, and it's on shutdown, but you can't get inside of it, a very similar thing is going to happen here. And they're not even talking about that on the mainstream. People are not in the know about these nuclear facilities. But yet, this is a judgment that's coming. A destroying wind is coming to Babylon the Great, which eventually we know it as that great millstone. And what is that great millstone? 200 million nuclear missiles when they shall make landfall. But also the curse from the Most High himself. The weapons of his indignation, the cup of wrath of indignation to fall upon Babylon the Great. And those that were partakers with Babylon the Great will also be cast into this. It shall become a lake of fire. But this nuclear meltdown is not going to be talked about on the mainstream. And how I got a hold of this information is funny enough, because before I got to this truth, of course, I was subscribed to InfoWars and Paul Bagley, the Coming Apocalypse Show. And it was Paul Bagley himself that actually had the update on that, because Dabu 7 is the only one that's been talking about the nuclear facilities that are in the Carolinas where the hurricane's going to make landfall. So a nuclear meltdown is on the way, similar to the ones in Chernobyl. And I believe that Chernobyl, that one was caused by a earthquake that happened in Russia. They're not even going to tell the people that, and they're not letting people evacuate. People have been blocked from evacuating. Again, all things that they will not talk about on the mainstream. But I'm going to read out of Baruch chapter 4 today, because we have our camps in there. And that this judgment that's coming upon Babylon the Great, the nuclear meltdown, is meant for the wicked and the two-thirds. Baruch chapter 4, verse 3. Take courage, my people, who perpetuate Israel's name. It was not for destruction that you were sold to the nations, but you were handed over to your enemies because you angered the Most High. For you provoked the one who made you by sacrificing to demons and not to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. You forgot the everlasting Father who brought you up, and you grieved Jerusalem who reared you. For she saw the wrath that came upon you from the Most High. And she said, listen, you neighbors of Zion. The Most High has brought great sorrow upon me. For I have seen the exile of my sons and daughters with the everlasting brought upon them. And, this is talking about, when we started falling into captivity, we were eventually sold to our enemies over here, and our final enemy being Esau, the so-called white man. For she saw the wrath that came upon you from the Most High, and she said, listen, you neighbors of Zion, the Most High has brought great sorrow upon me, for I have seen the exile of my sons and daughters, which the everlasting brought upon them. With joy I nurtured them, but I sent them away with weeping and sorrow. Let no one rejoice over me, a widow and bereaved of many. I was left desolate because of the sins of my children, because they turned away from the law of the Most High. They had no regard for his statutes. They did not walk in the ways of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai's commandments. So we weren't keeping the commandments, which is why we were brought here. But this is our final captivity. Or tread the paths of his righteousness showed them. Let the neighbors of Zion come. Remember the capture of my sons and daughters, which the everlasting brought upon them. For he brought a distant nation against them. Well, who's that distant nation talking about? Well, here we are on the west side, and for the longest, the west was not really traveled to very much. But, we're over here on the west, so we're on the other side. A nation ruthless and of a strange language, which had no respect for the aged and no pity for a child. I was talking about America, Babylon the Great, when we were sold into slavery by Ham. Ham and the rest of the nations were partakers in this. We were sold all across the world. And all those nations that took part in that are all being judged now by the Most High. And this place, Edom, the fact that there is a nuclear meltdown on the way, that's not going to be talked about, but this thing gets really big. They're going to be forced to talk about it. They led away the widow's beloved sons and bereaved the lonely women of her daughters. But how can I help you? For he who brought you these calamities upon you will deliver you from the hand of your enemies. So we're going to be delivered out of this place. We're just seeing the final realms of this. We have to go through Jacob's trouble first, where the mark will be mandatory. 2/3 of our people are going to get that mark, and we may even have to suffer death refusing that mark. Go, my children, go, for I have been left desolate. I have taken off the robe of peace and put on sackcloth for my supplication. I will cry to the everlasting all my days. That's what we're doing now when we're getting out on the streets and we're assembling together. We're crying out to the Most High because we want to be delivered from this place. We don't want to be here anymore. And, this meltdown that they're not going to talk about, just shows you one thing, though, that people did try to escape. And, no, man, they weren't even letting people out. And if, you could watch the prior video I put on, the longer length videos. And I will also say, if you want to watch the longer length videos of these, the Paul Bagley video where I actually got the information from about this nuclear meltdown, you can tune into Confusion of Face Redding 2 channels where most of the videos. I also sometimes cover local events such as the Delta fire, the car fire, other things like that. But also just, where I put together other brothers' videos and I forward them, The fact is, though, is that, yes, we have camps in both North Carolina and South Carolina. And I'm sure that they are doing just fine. But the fact that this, that they are really not even talking about this tells me that they're trying to hide this. So, I hope this has been edifying. Like everything else, call upon our power, if you're in those areas. But the government's not going to tell everyone that there's a nuclear meltdown on the way. For that, I want to say, Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakal Kadash, Braka Thumb. And hope this was edifying.